Welcome to Knitting Step by Step, the video podcast that's been teaching you how to knit. I'm your host, Jason Block.
And I'm your knitting instructor, Ivy Reisner.
This is episode 7, and today we start project 3, mittens. Of course, this is your third project, and by now you should be comfortable with the fundamentals of knitting, having finished a hat and a scarf. You should, of course, have these nice handmade accessories, which I just talked about for the wintertime. Speaking of accessories, we've got one more that we're going to give away very, very soon. It's the Knitting Step by Step tote bag. You need to send your scarf pictures to Ivy at knittingstepbystep.com by midnight Eastern Time, September 15th, 2007. Anyone who sends that in will be eligible to win the Knitting Step by Step tote bag with the subject scarf picture. So, we've got a lot to cover today, so let's get started.
Okay, for the mittens, I put the pattern up on the website, but it's a little different. There are numbers there for what to cast on and how far to go, but I really want these mittens to fit you well, so I'm going to show you how to size them precisely for you. The first thing you're going to need to do...
but before we do that, remember, there are some younger viewers out there, so we're doing some math here. We don't know how, what grade the people who are watching. So, if you're having a little bit of the trouble with the math, ask an adult. They'll be able to help you. So now, we'll get into measurements.
Okay. And if you're having problems understanding my formula, anyone email me. I'll help you out.
Or do the voice line, which is on the show notes as well.
You're going to want to measure how big the diameter of your wrist is. So,
willing wrist.
Circumference of your wrist. And Jason's wrist is about 7 inches. So, your gauge is going to be 5 stitches to the inch. You want 7 inches.
So 5 times 7 is 35.
Right. Now, your mittens, you're going to start with that K2P2 ribbing again. And you want to knit a mitten to fit snugly. So you're going to always round down to the nearest interval of 4.
Which is 32.
32. So, you get
your 200 yards of worsted weight wool, I believe? Or
this is wool, yeah, but any yarn will do.
Yarn. Worsted weight yarn, excuse me.
Hey, wool is good. We like the wool.
Of course we do.
Now, I'm going to do the same trick like I did with the hat. This really does make for a good tail. You wrap it around 3 times, and this is the point at which you're going to make your loop. Make your loop. And I'm going to do the long tail cast on because I think it just makes the nicest edge. It is very important when you're dealing with something like a mitten or a sock to keep your cast on edge quite loose.
Why? Why?
So that it'll go on easily, and also your arm is going to taper a little bit wider towards the elbow, so the cast on is going to be sitting on the widest part of your arm that the mitten's going to sit on.
And of course, if you need to look at how to cast on, there are videos on the website as well for a close-up at this particular point in time.
Yeah, that's going to be on the wiki, and it's also in episode 2.
Right. That is just the reason why we are not doing this particular cast on close-up. Almost up to the 32 for my particular wrist here. 31 and 32. Okay.
And you can see there's not a lot of excess tail. It really is a good way to figure out how long you should pull.
Okay, now from what you told me, you have to cast them on to 3 needles.
Okay. You're going to divide these stitches onto 3 needles. You want to divide them approximately evenly, and you want to divide them in groups of 4.
So if I remember my math right, it's 12, 12, and 8. So we do
You're
this.
just going to slip the stitches. Just move them over. So I'm going to move 12, and then I'm going to move 8, and I'm going to leave 12 left over.
Right. Now, some people may get a little afraid with working with more than one needle. Why usually with two, people have coordination. Why do people get so upset with like 3 or 4 needles?
Because instead of having a little block here like you would have in regular needles, you've just got a point. And a lot of people worry that the stitches are just going to slip off. That doesn't happen. What does happen sometimes is that this point is going to pick up an extra stitch between itself and the next needle over. So that's the reason I wanted this divided into groups of 4. Because if you get to purl 2 and you see an extra stitch sitting there, take a look. Make sure it's really a stitch, it really has a bar on one side or the other. And if it doesn't, just knock it off the needle. It's just the needle has gotten itself into the work and has picked something up that it's not supposed to have.
Okay, so how
And also, if you have some worries, I said I was going to teach you a trick with point protectors. You can put a point protector on each end of the needle that you're not working with. And that turns this into straight needles and a stitch holder. It makes it much easier to deal with. You're probably going to get tired of moving these things around after between 5 and 10 rows, at which point take them off, you're good to go. That's just there to get you comfortable with double pointed needles.
Okay, so right now, so at this particular point, you're gonna when you're needing to join, you don't want it to twist. Why?
Right. Because if you twist, you're going to have something like a Mobius strip going around, and that is impossible to correct without ripping the entire thing out. So what you want to do is you want to set up your needles so that all of your stitches are pointing downward, and then come around, make sure they're still all pointing downward, and start knitting onto this first needle. Now if this gives you problems and it keeps twisting on you, there's a trick. You work back, without joining the first row, you work back in reverse. So instead of doing knit 2, purl 2 ribbing, you're going to work back 1 round of purl 2, knit 2 ribbing. When you weave this tail in, you're going to close that tiny 1 row gap, and then it will be super easy for you to see your stitches and not have the problem of them twisting.
Okay, so you're going to do the knit 2, purl 2 ribbing in the round until you have 2 inches. Okay, then we knit 1 round plain, and then in a second we're going to show what the increases are.